agriculture is the worst thing that we can do to the planet, right? In both the animal side and the plant side, right? It's damaging to the earth to farm both animals and plants. There's obviously ways that you can do it more sustainably, and there's ways that you can do it renewably. And like, for instance, rotating crops, right? Instead of grazing in the same fields, move around, because it promotes growth in different areas. It also helps other animals have more food in the area. It helps things like for instance, after my cows graze, they leave a lot of fertilizer, and the gophers go nuts for all the dandelions, right? So like things like that. I have seen the negative impacts of mass farming of certain things that vegans specifically use, especially like the almonds for almonds milk. Even vegan products that are being farmed when it comes to organic foods, like there's a lot of pesticides that are organic based, like azadirachtin or neem oil, that will destroy an entire hive. And so I'm just curious, like, again, not like, I'm not directly blaming you, but just like, if you, like, you've made it very clear that there's a moral standpoint that you like to view on being a vegan, but there is a massive negative impact that veganism or growing food would have on the earth if everybody were to change to vegan, right? So like, how do you combat that? What is a scalable option for veganism that would allow people to input food to make them survive, but then also would be sustainable for the earth, for the animals that just want to live in the wild? You are saying everyone should be vegan, right?
Yeah, I think veganism personally aligns with most people's values, is where I typically come from.
But if your values are that you want to protect animals, farming enough plants to feed humanity would cause more animals to die than if everybody were to be a carnivore. If we were to take 100 people in and
wait. How
grow food?
Yeah.
Hang on, I'll explain. If we were to grow food so say we were to grow enough plants for them to survive, right? We would have to use so much land that we would deforest so many animals, but I could feed 100 people on 6 elk, on 6, like 7, like elk every year. And we already have an issue where there are more male elks than there are way more female elks than there are males. So that would actually promote the males to impregnate more often and actually raise the amount of elk in there. So if I were to kill 6 female elks, the big problem that we have with elk is we can't keep their numbers down no matter how hard we try, because the more that we try to thin them out, the more that they promote themselves and they're starving to death. But this way we could actually have grass-fed options that are sustainable and kill much less animals. And I personally, like I said, as an animal lover, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, so a few things. So first of all, I'm not convinced that we would be able to sustainably practice a carnivorous diet to feed the entire world. I don't think that we'll ever be able to do that. Like, there's no way. Like, there's no way we can feed 8 billion humans on just elk or hunting or things like that. And the reality is that all of these animals that we hunt need to eat plants. We talked a bit about earlier, right? Like when we look at our current global food system, the majority of crops grown are fed to livestock animals. And if we were to transition to a global plant-based food system, we'd be able to rewild anywhere between a quarter to a third of all of the currently available, or all the current cropland that we use. We would just be able to rewild it, and we wouldn't have factory farms. We wouldn't have animal agricultural operations. We'd be able to open up all of that land for resources. And I think ultimately too, from like a normative ethical perspective, I think we're coming from 2 opposite sides of this, really. So like what I advocate for with veganism is deontologically extending rights that we offer humans to non-human animals as well, just fundamentally, like not like cows should drive cars and pigs should vote or anything like that, but if we can afford this fundamental right to life, or at least a life free from commodification, exploitation, and death, we should extend that. And it seems like in your sense, you're arguing more from like a utilitarian standpoint, like whatever reduces the most harm overall is good. And I think we also both draw different lines between like how much we might value sustainability, right? Because like if we really wanted to be super sustainable, I could like go down the road and kill my mom and eat her, and she'd be way more sustainable than going 20 minutes to a market.
As I do, you would get almost no nutritional value out of that.
Well, I'm saying, like, I could present a hypothetical in which the most sustainable thing
but
to do
you've
would be
actually done
great.
nothing to answer my question, though. And what I'm asking specifically is, it takes about 25 times more plant-based food to give the same sustenance that you would get out of meat. I'm not saying that this means everyone should be a carnivore. I am a whole foods carnivore because it works for me. My daughter isn't. My son is, and my wife is. But for my daughter, it's not a healthy way for her to live.
Okay.
Right? So she doesn't.
So.
Right? And so my question is, hang on. I'm asking him. No offense, but because we and him are in this debate, I suppose. But my question is that you say that harming animals is unethical, and while I agree, veganism causes more harm when it comes to deforestation. If you take those factory farms and you reforest them to still obtain the amount of sustainable food, meaning that you can provide sustenance to yourself, right? There is no way that you can do that and cause less harm to animals than if you were to be on an only carnivore diet. Again, though, I agree with you. Both the vegan and the carnivore diet is bad for the majority of people. That's the reason why almost at the same rate of 84 to 86% respectively, people within the first 6 months of being a vegan or a carnivore stop being a vegan or a carnivore because it doesn't work for them, right? I have been able to show the glaring faults that exist in the carnivore's diet. Are you willing to admit that there are glaring hang on. Are you willing to admit there are glaring problems with the vegan diet? And there's absolutely no way you can argue with the fact that vegan diet at a global level would cause much more harm to the earth.
So logistically speaking, I hear the concern. Ethically, no, I'm not convinced whatsoever about any notion against
you're okay with
ethical veganism. Logistically,
secondhand harm to
animals. So logistically, I understand that it's not perfect, right? But when you say carnivore, by carnivore, just so we're clear, I guess, do you mean you literally only eat meat?
So the only things that I eat are meat, and then I will have honey in place of sugars and sweeteners and stuff like that. But I also don't eat anything with dairy, any kind of plant-based anything really. So for instance, most of my sodium broths and stuff like that are just made directly from the marrow, stuff like that.
Interesting. Yeah. So I mean, again though,
Actually, most of my food recently has come from all the organs that we have.
Yeah. So what I think we're going to have contention on is you're raising the argument that essentially a plant-based global food system is more harmful than a carnivorous global food system.
It is, yeah.
But I fail to understand how that is though, because we are practicing essentially a conglomerate of both right now, with as far as I'm concerned, much more emphasis on the carnivorous aspect of it. The majority of just because the majority of resources
every year is plant-based.
Yeah, it is. But the majority of resources going into agriculture go toward animal agriculture. Just I'm not convinced that it would be more sustainable.
People feeding their animals grains too, because they shouldn't be eating grains, right?
How do you sustainably feed everybody a carnivore-only diet? Is my question.
Yeah, so for instance, when I graze, my cows are fed their natural food source, and as a result, their meat is less fatty, and so less meat goes a much farther way. So our cows specifically, we actually don't eat our cows. We end up selling them, but for instance, our elk that we eat, because we have a lot of elk in the area that we do have to keep their numbers down, because if we don't, they'd starve, right? So that's the reason why there's always an open hunting season for elk. So I will kill 2 elk per year, and that will feed me and 2 of my neighbors. It'll feed all of our families, right? And so now here's the issue, is that when you go into the inner city, the vegan and the carnivore diet are both an unsustainable option. Outside of a city, they're both a sustainable option, right? Inside of the infrastructure of a metropolitan area or even a suburb, since they don't have the available animals in the area, they have to go so far out to bring the animals in. You could just freeze the animals. Like I was saying, if we go into an apartment building with 100 people and we put in freezers, I could feed the entire 100 people on 6 elk for the entire year.
Yeah, so the issue is just
so you can freeze that food.
Yeah.
And then it lasts longer than plants would too. So it's more sustainable that way.
It's gonna get into a really
city, it's impossible for either of these two diets to actually work.
I'm not 100% convinced because again, one of the careers that I was pursuing for a short while was indoor vertical farming via hydro and aeroponics.
Also big elk country, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, I was responding to Raven. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I?
I'm just not how are you going to? It's going to be hard to actually quantify. I suppose it's going to be such like a nitty gritty quantification issue, and it's a logistics issue. But how do you actually want to advocate for every single person to just hunt elk, or
no, I never said that. I specifically said that.
I'm asking
a carnivore.
Oh. So I thought your original
plan. I understand why there's drawbacks to the carnivore diet, right? There are a lot of health benefits to it. There's a ton of health benefits. Like for instance, I get none of the bad cholesterols, all the good ones. And so I'm just gonna be honest, my virility is through the fucking roof. My wife loves that.
All right.
Right. But there's a whole bunch of things, right? But either way, there's a lot of people who they can't survive like this. Like I have the type of body where I can survive like this. Honestly, sometimes though, I do break it every 6 or 7 months. I'll break it because I want a salad. Because salads they're freaking delicious, dude. They're great, and I have them as a whole food salad, as a vegan would, as well. But I definitely don't feel personally that I've been nourished. Other people feel completely nourished, so they should go on that. Right?
Can I jump in here real quick?
The ethical standpoints of it. No, what I'm getting at is the ethical standpoints of. Well, I'm still in the middle of my.
Yeah, I know. Just wrap it up.
The ethical standpoints of it is that the secondhand result of farming enough food for global veganism causes deforestation that kills animals. You have to use pesticides. You do, even like I said, neem oil, the lowest grade, the lowest grade pesticide can kill an entire hive of bees in days, and then actually it can kill multiple nets when other bees come over to steal their honey back. Right?
Okay.
There's a lot of issues. Deforestation on the level of land that needs to be used for farming plants has a negative impact on animals.
Okay.
We know this,
all right.
Right?
So can I jump in now? Can I jump in now?
When you take that land and you farm on it, you ruin that land.
Okay.
We have to do so much work to make that land workable again. It's much easier.
Okay.
To take
You good?
animals, and if we were to, instead of factory farm, use graze-fed food instead.
Right. So
Okay.
again, the issue becomes that we can't do that to feed the world. That is not sustainable to feed the world.
You're right. We can't do that to feed the world, but we can do that to feed one country. We can set it up to where it will work. Not as, see, this is what I'm getting at. You don't understand. I'm not saying that all the meat should be the only food. The meat that currently exists does not need to be factory farmed. The issue is that it's very profitable, but it's not sustainable. You're right, especially because they're grain-fed foods. They're extra fatty. They're ridiculously unhealthy.
Okay. All right.
I wouldn't even say it's profitable either, just because of how unsustainable it is. I mean, we talked.
Yeah, so let me throw in some numbers real quick. Can I please hold on just a second. Can I throw in some numbers real quick so that we cite our sources, because you're making a lot of claims. I appreciate the polite dialogue and everything, but I'd like to see your sources as far as how much plant farming would destroy the environment compared to animal farming, or compared. Hold on. If you want to, hold on. Sorry, I'm gonna post some sources here and read some. Hold on. Please, we let you talk for a good long time, and we appreciate hearing. Hold on. Sorry. I don't want to be. Sorry, I don't want to be interrupted. Just hang on a second. I'm just going to post some sources. We let you talk for a good long time. I like hearing your input, but I want to speak for a second, okay? So what I'm going to do is guide everybody in the audience up to stage 1 text on the left side of your screen. It's 4 channels above where we're currently at, and I'm going to post a picture with some statistics here. Okay, so the USDA reported that it takes 16 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of beef, because the farmer has to feed. Hold on, hey, buddy, middle of a sentence though. Hey, middle of a sentence though. I'm in the middle of a sentence. We let you talk, bro. We let you talk. All right, so I'm muting him because we let him talk for a good long time. And it's our turn to respond now, all right? I want to show some statistics because he didn't provide any sources. So what I'm going to read here is the USDA reported that it takes 16 pounds of plants to make 1 pound of beef, because the farmer has to feed the cow every day for 18 months to get them up to slaughter weight. Okay, 16-to-1 ratio to raise cattle versus plants. The University of Oxford reported that raising animals takes up 75% of our farmland, because we have to grow a bunch of crops to feed all those animals. 75% of our farmland. So if we switch to plant agriculture, we would free up 75% of our farmland. 70% of the deforested land in the Amazon is used for cattle. 70% of the Amazon is destroyed for cattle. Okay, and that's from Reuters. All right. National Geographic reported that a vegan diet saves 600 gallons of water per day per person, because we have to water the crops that are fed to the animals, and we have to give the animals water to drink. 600 gallons of water per day per person saved on a vegan diet. And then lastly, the United Nations reported that the greenhouse gases coming from raising cattle is more than the entire transportation sector, which includes all trucks, trains, planes, and ships. Okay? A Beyond Burger versus a beef burger, all right? A Beyond Burger saves 99% less water, 93% less land, 90% fewer greenhouse gas emissions, and 46% less energy. So I encourage everybody to check out those sources, and if, oh God, I'm a dad, wants to post some scientific sources to back up his claims, that would be great as well. But the point is, we cannot feed 8 billion and growing people globally through hunting elk or raising elk or whatever he's talking about, because for one, the greenhouse gases coming from elk would be astronomical, in addition to the land usage, because we'd have to actually breed elk in order to provide that much meat for people, okay, for 8 billion people.
God, they've muted you. They can't hear you. Like, so, like, look, whatever this is with people just shouting over each other, like, this is not the way that we're going to let things continue to operate.
I can't hear him if he's saying anything because I muted him. So I'm just providing some sources, some statistics.
Look, listen. Hey, folks. Like, there's 60 people in the audience. They don't just want that. Like, when you're both talking, we just can't hear either of you. Like, so. Because he can't hear you, because he's muted you, because you wouldn't let them
No, I'm saying I've asked them both multiple times. Why wouldn't they answer it?
Oh yeah, well I started to get at it, right? I think it's because we take different approaches. I take more of a deontological approach. You take more of a utilitarian issue with it.
It's not. It's a very simple thing.
No?
Does farmland cause harm to animals?
Yeah, absolutely. No vegan would ever say it
Why
doesn't.
are you okay with that, but not okay with me killing 6 elk per year? When farmland, by far, 20 acres of farmland harms more animals per year.
Because it's more logically consistent. Because you're essentially, again, because
it's not
it's logically consistent with my deontological.
You said if it applies to one thing but not the other, then it's not logically consistent.
No,
that's exactly what you
let me explain, right? So for me, veganism is an extension deontologically, right? Which I started to explain previously.
You said earlier that if something works in one direction but not the other, then it's logically inconsistent. That's exactly what you've done here.
What can you explain or elaborate further?
Because you're saying that it's okay to harm animals for the production of food, but it's not okay to harm animals.
No. I'm saying to willfully contribute to a system that necessitates oppression and requires oppression, right? Necessitates oppression.
So farming plants necessitates that you kill animals by getting rid of their homes. It necessitates that you have some way to protect your crops with pesticides, which kills bees.
No, disagree. Nope.
It does.
No, because I practice sustainable farming, and I there is no crop death.
And you're saying, wait a minute, so you're saying everybody can sustainably farm? Every
absolutely not. But
So
like, here's the thing.
There you go.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Look, when you
no sustainable option. Agreed.
So if you consider, well, if you really want to get down to it, nothing is sustainable. The most sustainable thing,
So
yeah,
that's
the most sustainable thing,
unless they really want to. And you have absolutely no right to tell people to be vegan. Thank you.
Well, first of all, you're
okay.
You're okay. Wow, very telling. So that was a straw man. I never made that claim. I would probably agree with that claim based on the, if we actually understood what veganism is. So look, let me explain. Deontologically speaking, veganism is in line with my values because I value intention and I value systems that necessitate oppression, right? So if I buy a plant-based product at a store or if I grow plants, it does not necessitate an individual losing their life. If I were to consume an animal product, 100% certain, there is a 100% certainty that an individual had to die for that to exist. It is a deontological extension of rights. It is not a utilitarian. It's not utilitarian. If I were to only care about reducing as much harm as possible, right? It seems great on the surface, but if you really go through with that logic, you would conclude to some terrible reductios. The best way to reduce all harm, hypothetically speaking, if I had a button, and if I pushed that button, it killed every single living being in existence, that would reduce harm, because there would be no more harm. It would cause a great deal of harm, but, down the line, there would be less harm in the end than there would be if we continued going on, right? And that sounds really crazy, but this is the issue with utilitarianism. Veganism does not seek to cause the least. I mean, it kind of does, right? But it doesn't seek to be perfect and never cause harm. It seeks to abstain or divest from systems that necessitate oppression. So let's think about it this way, right? Statistically, if we have everyone out on the street driving cars, it is a statistical inevitability, right? You can argue the same way with growing plants. If you're growing plants and you're farming crops to feed the world, yeah, it's extremely probable that an individual is going to die for those crops to be protected or come into existence, right? So in the same way, if everyone's out driving cars, right, it is a statistical probability that an accident will happen and children will die. So should everybody stop driving cars? No, but that also doesn't, I don't think that justifies me driving my car full speed ahead at a family on the sidewalk if I want to, right? It's not like, it just doesn't hold for me, right? Because it is a deontological extension of rights. I just wanted to clear that up for people, because I feel like that guy came in and whipped his junk out and then swatted it around a bunch and talked over people and then left feeling like he won something. And I don't see it, and I don't feel like we were maybe given a completely fair shot. And I feel like just at the beginning, he really misunderstood what veganism was and what exactly my intentions were, and what we would define veganism as a movement, right? And how it really does already apply to the values that most people hold. I digress.
Yeah, you did good.
I guess. Very, very sorry that got so heated. I guess if we really want to get more into the nitty gritty of things like that, that would be something we can discuss in the server. We can have we can open that can of worms and get into the normative ethics of veganism and things like that.
Yeah. So
I heard where he was coming from. I hear his point, right? But again, I still just think that what he was arguing for has some really disturbing consequences, considering some of the reductios that we can go toward, right? Like we can talk all day about what doing actions that might reduce harm the most. That's not an obligation that anybody wants to be faced with. We could present hypotheticals all the time around every corner where what action would reduce harm the most? Every single waking moment you are alive, you are morally obligated to take measures that reduce harm in the world. But that's not fair to impose on anybody. I don't think anybody would want to actually do that. This is the issue with utilitarianism, and I feel like that's where he was ultimately coming from. I heard him out. I understood all of his points. It's fine, right? But
yeah, I don't think that he was making legitimate points, though, because he wasn't backing up his claims with any sources, and when I asked for sources, it seems like he just got mad. I muted him, so I wasn't able to hear him if he was talking that whole time while I was reading statistics and citing my sources. So I don't know if he was just interrupting the whole time or what, but hopefully the audience was able to hear some of that. like the statistics that I read, but I would argue that like so yeah, you've got deontology, which is what Hotzen has been kind of promoting, and then on the other side is utilitarianism, and we saw some flaws with that. I'm kind of maybe in the middle with like threshold deontology. So my idea is to try to like maximize well-being and minimize harm while respecting individual rights as much as possible and practicable
Yeah.
for
Right.
all
Exactly.
for all sentient life, humans and animals. So I just try to help the world in as many ways as possible and not hurt it in many ways as possible. But but I'm realistic in that because I know that, like Hotzen was saying, there's some problems with the conclusions of full utilitarianism. But I would argue that veganism is still better from a utilitarian framework as well. Because again, everything that guy was saying was just untrue. And I quoted my statistics about land use for raising animals for food. It's drastically more than what would be required for plant agriculture. And we would have to have, he admitted himself that it's not sustainable, it's not realistic to hunt elk to feed the global population of humans, which is 8 billion people who want to eat meat. And so, we'd have to like breed more elk and ship them all across the world and like all kinds of weird stuff that is totally, just a violation of each of those elk's rights. And since we don't need to do it, and it's worse for the environment, and it's just not sustainable because there's not going to be that many people who are going to be willing to hunt that often to feed that many people, and most people aren't going to want to hunt themselves. And he realized that there was a problem with this. But yeah, and then we were talking about vertical farming, which is what we're aiming towards. So even if veganism isn't perfect right now, and it's never going to be perfect, but we can keep striving to make it better. And there are real solutions that are already taking place, such as vertical farming, wherein this is an indoor aeroponic farm or hydroponic farm stacked like a skyscraper, an indoor building where the plants are stacked on top of each other, going up into the sky instead of taking up a bunch of land going sideways, right? And because it's indoor, there's no need for pesticides because insects can't get inside and little rodents can't get inside. And vertical farming uses 95% less water than traditional plant farming, and takes half as long to grow the plants than traditional plant agriculture. So what we need to be doing is diverting funding away from factory farms and slaughterhouses, and investing this money into vertical farms and building these buildings all over the world so that everybody has renewable sources of plant foods that run primarily like not off of fossil fuels and stuff, and they're local, and like these could be built in a city. These could be built in basements underneath restaurants. Like there's so many ways that we can improve the current system, but just resorting to shooting elk in the heart when we don't need to is just blatant animal cruelty. Yeah, so we breed them into existence. So vegans are advocating that we stop breeding cows into existence so that there won't be as many cows. There will be hardly any cows because we won't breed them. But this kind of tags on to what the last guy was saying as far as like, as far as land usage, because elk or whatever animal, because they have to graze so much, that's what's called, there's not enough land to turn factory farms into free range farms. The reason, like, it's better for the environment to have factory farms, which sounds crazy, right? But it's better because you cram a bunch of animals into a small area. Because if they were free range, there wouldn't be enough land for them because they'd be taking up acres and acres and acres. They'd have a nicer life, but they don't care. The farmer doesn't care about that. They care about profits, right? And there's just not enough land mass for this. But yeah, so to your point, like we just stopped breeding these animals into existence.
I mean, like I said, we gotta control the population. I don't want to see cows running over my fucking driveway.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the issue.
Yeah, they'd be kept like in areas that are fenced off, so they're not going to wander off into the street or anything. But again,
Yeah.
we'd stop breeding them, so there won't be so many.
It's right. It's simple supply and demand. The animals are bred in controlled environments to meet consumer demand. So ideally, as time goes on, less and less animals will be bred. It's not like the whole world is going to go vegan overnight, and then we're just going to release billions of cows into the street. That's not realistically what would happen.
So in stage 1 text, I just posted a nice little video of a deer playing soccer, and it just reminds me of a little kid having fun. And so I don't see why anybody would want to put a bullet through this innocent, gentle, playful being's little body. Like, why? Just be nice. It's easy. Like, It's bullying to pick on them just because they're weaker than us. They're not as smart as us, so we just take advantage of them, exploit the power we hold over them, like just like a little kid.
I would just like to say that I admire your patience and persistence, and keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, man.
Thank you. Of a T-shirt that I have about the Animal Bill of Rights, and so I'll just read this to you real quick. This is the proposed legislation that we're eventually aiming for: the right to rescue animals from distress and exploitation, the right to a protected home, habitat, or ecosystem, right to have their interests represented in court and protected by law, right to not be exploited, abused, or killed by humans, right to be free or to have a guardian and not owned.
So, just to be a little bit more clear, you have more of a idea that they have a right to life than like equivalents of human rights, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make that idea clear. And here's another easy question for you. Are you going to raise your kids vegan?
If I end up having them, yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah,
I
I have no desire to have children, but if I did, I would adopt because there's a bunch of kids in foster homes that need a forever home. Yeah, if I did have a kid, yes, I would. It would be a vegan house. I would not allow animal products in the house. If the kid was dead set on eating animal products, they got to do it somewhere else. And I would just try to instill values of animal rights and anti-animal cruelty into the kid and teach them why animals deserve rights, in my opinion, and show them videos of not necessarily slaughterhouses when the kid's real young, but once they get into middle school, they're going to see something. But the idea is I would want to like be someone that my kid could come and talk to about these issues and other issues, and so I wouldn't want to be over authoritarian on them. I would like to be able to be there for them, but at the same time I would want to stress how important it is, because for the same reason I wouldn't want my kid to think it's okay to bully a smaller kid, I wouldn't want my kid to think that it's okay to bully an animal.
Cool. So all I want to say now is good job, guys. I really appreciate like your patience with like the memes, the crappy jokes, and even the occasional trolling. Like it's pretty cool of you guys.
I see like arguing so much and people getting real mad. And an example was that one dad earlier. Like he got very opinionated, and I always really wondered like why can't we just accept that other people have different views on this stuff.
Sure. Well, I would say like it depends on what their views are, you know. So like, in his case, I think he felt threatened and frustrated and upset, and I understand where he's coming from, but I don't think it's justified. But I think his problem was that vegans claim to be like know-it-alls, and like we think we have this solution, but he sees some problems with it. And if he would just listen for a second, he might find some answers that he wasn't expecting, because I think we got them. But also, he realizes that we're trying to abolish all the slaughterhouses and turn everybody vegan. You know, we are trying to change the law to protect animals, and that puts him at risk because we're also trying to make hunting illegal. And he thrives off of hunting. That's his whole diet. He only eats meat, and he likes to track animals down and shoot them and dismember their corpses and stuff. That's kind of his thing, and we're standing in the way of that. From our perspective, he doesn't have the right to cut these poor animals' heads off. These animals did nothing wrong. They do not deserve to be treated with violence. We're just being as consistent as any animal lover, any person who eats animals but cares about animals, when they say that they would protect a dog with legal rights from being kicked or being killed unnecessarily, right? We have laws against hurting dogs and cats and stuff, but we're just being more consistent, and we're trying to educate and motivate people to follow through with the values that they already have and just apply those values to all animals instead of drawing an arbitrary line and being speciesist, discriminating on the basis of species, right? Speciesism. So we're just trying to like be as consistent as possible and help the world in more ways than we hurt it. And we don't think that hunting or factory farmers or slaughterhouses or anything, we don't think people have or should have the legal right to needlessly harm and kill innocent animals. Like, these are babies and their mothers, and we cut their heads off. Like, it's not okay.
I can totally see where, like, both sides are coming from, and, like, personally, like, I see your side with, like, the slaughterhouses, like, that doesn't really seem right. Like, I personally, I do eat meat, I like eating meat, and I understand and appreciate that other people don't, and I can respect their opinion, but it really irks me when people that don't eat meat decide to bash on people that do. Have this have respectful conversations and just spread our opinions instead of spreading hate because this person doesn't want to eat meat or wants to try to, or them personally wants to try to take away things that meat eaters like.
I would recommend, like, think about it like this. Like, if you saw somebody kicking a dog and you knew that the dog wasn't hurting anybody or anything, you saw some guy kicking a dog, how would you respond?
Most likely going to stop that in ways.
Yeah, so I have a little list of a few things that I would try. You know, first I would try talking to him, maybe even in a calm voice, though I would probably have the instinct to yell at him, but I might try to, like, de-escalate with some calm words and be like, hey, my friend, what's going on? Talk to me. What's happening, you know? And if that doesn't work, I'm going to start yelling at him, right? Try to snap him out of it, even get his anger to turn towards me, right? So I'm going to start yelling at him to leave that dog alone. If he still ignores me, I'm going to get in between him and the dog. I'm going to put my body in the mix so that he has to kick me in order to kick the dog. And if that doesn't work and he still keeps trying to kick the dog, I might try to pick up the dog and run away, right, to rescue the animal. And if that doesn't work, like he's running behind us and he's kicking me to kick the dog, right, and like I drop the dog and now he's kicking me to get through the, right, I'm going to like use physical force to hold this guy down, ideally non-lethal. Like, I don't want to kill the guy, and I don't want to hurt him too bad either, but I would not be against physically holding him down and, like, maybe call the cops on him or something, right? So these are some of the, or I might call for other people to help me hold him down, all these kinds of things. So, and I'm guessing most people would react something like that, you know, and I think that's totally justified because this is animal cruelty and it's totally unnecessary. But he had a reason. His reason is pleasure. He gets some kind of pleasure out of kicking the dog. It makes him feel like a big man, right? Like a big tough guy. He enjoys the power and the thrill, right, of being a bully. So now let's compare that to another situation, okay? So kicking a dog for pleasure is not as bad as stabbing a pig for pleasure. Stabbing a pig for the taste pleasure of their dead flesh, okay? Stabbing is worse than kicking. And whether it's a dog or a pig, both of it is needless, done simply for pleasure, and causes massive unnecessary harm. All right, and killing someone, whether they're a human or a dog or a pig, killing them, even if it's quick and painless, killing them is worse than kicking them. Because yeah, if you get kicked, you're going to have a bruise, but you'll get over it, okay? You've still got your whole life ahead of you. But if you get killed, even if it's quickly and painlessly, where there's no fear and no pain, your whole life has been taken from you. Everything you had, everything in the future that you would have enjoyed, all the good food, the sun on your back, the fresh air, time with your friends and family, playing in the yard like dogs and pigs enjoy doing. They enjoy playing with their friends, right? So it's worse to kill than to kick. So if we think it's wrong to kick and we would actually intervene and use force and use the law to help us stop someone from kicking a dog, then we should do the exact same thing when it comes to stabbing a pig. All right, and so yes, ideally we'd be able to have polite conversations like what you and I are doing right now. We're having a nice polite discussion about the issue, but that's because we're able to be mature and argue in good faith and be respectful. But if you started interrupting me or I started interrupting you or yelling at each other, it starts to escalate into a more heated debate, which can be fun also, you know, and we can still, like, you know, I may not be able to win that guy over who's, you know, interrupting and just totally doesn't care about animals. I may not be able to win him over, but I can present better arguments than he makes, and that will win over the audience who's watching the debate. And I can conduct myself in a more respectful manner despite him antagonizing me, and hopefully that will help us win over the audience as well.